The art of defending. Without a doubt, football has given us legends in the center-back position. Players willing to leave it all on the field just to win a loose ball or to block a shot destined for goal. It is no coincidence that in this position you will find someone wearing the captain's armband, as it demands abilities beyond being a good defender, such as presence, tactical understanding, and leadership. Names that come to mind when you think about the greatest defenders of all time are Paolo Maldini, Franz Beckenbauer, Carles Puyol, Sergio Ramos. But if I ask you, who's been the best central defender of the past years, what will you say? I suppose the answer will vary based on the team or league that you follow. Premier League or Liverpool fans will say Virgil van Dijk. Sergio Ramos will be the answer of Real Madrid or La Liga fans. Other candidates will be Giorgio Chiellini or maybe Thiago Silva. But what about statistics? Are these players the leaders of every defensive metric? And what are the most important qualities in a central defender? Join me in this Football Quest, where I will analyze defensive metrics of the past 5 years with the purpose of finding the best central defender in world football. Do you know what I like about football? Besides being the king of all sports, the fact that, unlike others, it does not measure the quality of a player based only on statistics. Don't get me wrong, the increase of statistical information is the best thing that has happened to the sport in the last decade, with invaluable benefits in terms of performance improvement, post-match analysis, tactical preparation, injury recovery and prevention, but especially to get rid of that old-school scouting, which could lead boards to sign managers and players not aligned with their playing style, prone to injuries, those that do not understand that a player's performance worsens with age and not the other way around, making decisions that could take perhaps the best team in history and turn it into a laughingstock? Hypothetically speaking, of course. My point is that, for now, there isn't a stat that universally judges the performance of a player or a team. And even though we're getting closer with stats such as XG, there will always be room for interpretation and opinion, and this video is no exception. If we want to find the best defender in recent years, we first need to ask, what makes a good defender? Currently, the most common defensive statistics are tackles, interceptions, balls recovered, aerial duels won, clearances, blocks, fouls committed. Alright, but which of these attributes matters the most? In one of his most famous quotes, Paolo Maldini stated, "If I have to make a tackle, then I've already made a mistake." And with an average of 0.56 tackles per game over a 25-year career, I don't think anyone will argue that this number made Il Capitano a worse defender. Virgil van Dijk with 0.9 tackles per game is a current reflection of this. From this perspective, attributes such as interceptions, balls recovered, and blocks will be more relevant than tackles. However, one aspect that we need to consider is the style of play of both players' teams. Maldini was part of a legendary AC Milan when the misunderstood Catenaccio reigned in Europe. Their counter-attack style did not force him to be aggressive. Van Dijk, on the other hand, plays for a Liverpool side also known for deadly counters, but with a 63% of possession on average. And when no one doubts of his incredible awareness of the game, the need to make tackles decreases when your team has the ball. Also, if having a higher number of tackles isn't considered a good thing, what do we say about players like Antonio Rudiger or Marquinhos with twice as many tackles per game? Are they worse defenders? Clearly, we will need something a bit more solid as a starting point. Let's go back to basics. The objective of a central defender is simple: to prevent the opposing team from scoring a goal. It is the second last line of defense of a team, just in front of the goalkeeper. Here's an idea. Just as we judge how good a striker is based on the number of goals he scores, why not do the same with a defender based on how many goals he allows? Of course, a defender is not solely responsible for every goal conceded, But maybe by analyzing those teams with the fewest goals allowed, we can find some interesting patterns in defensive metrics. So here are the teams with the fewest goals conceded per game in the last 5 years from the top 5 European leagues. A couple of interesting facts jump out of the screen. First, to highlight how Atletico is the only team present in the top 3 in each season, so Cholo, an amazing job, well done. There is also a high presence of teams with counter-attack style, and mainly from La Liga and Premier League. Of course, a big asterisk in 2020 where I had to exclude teams from the French League and Bundesliga as they did not complete 38 games that season. In terms of players, those playing for teams within the top 3 were rated among FIFA's best defenders in the following season. So if these ratings are something to consider, we might be on the right track. Then, by analyzing defensive statistics where these teams perform well, I was able to identify 3 metrics in common, and these are: aerial duels won. This measures the percentage in which a player wins when disputing the ball in the air. The best defenders in this metric possess 3 key qualities: strength, positioning, and timing. As you can see, big teams lead this stat every year, both in the top 3 and the top 10, in comparison to the average. And players like Vincent Kompany, Diego Godin, Sergio Ramos, and Virgil van Dijk were undoubtedly a key factor. The second attribute was passing accuracy. For passing, statistics measure passes attempted, passes completed, and passes completed under pressure. When you look at the percentage of passes completed, you can see how, in general, teams in the top 10 perform much higher than average. And this makes sense if you think about it, since accurate passes prevent possession loss, errors, and the need to make tackles that can lead to fouls and yellow cards. You might be surprised by Atletico's numbers because of how low they are. But if you look closer at the metric passes completed under pressure, you can see how in reality Atletico's pass accuracy in dangerous areas of the field is above average. And again, this makes sense. What separates top players from the rest is their ability to play well regardless of the pressure of the opponent, the match, or the stadium. Now let's talk about the third and final metric in common, which was tackles efficiency. A tackle is considered successful if it steals the ball from the opponent without committing a foul. Statistics measure number of tackles, tackles won, and tackles lost. When analyzing number of tackles, you can see how top 10 teams perform well below average, while Atletico leads in every season. But we must be careful when comparing number of tackles in isolation, as it favors teams that play without the ball. To reduce this effect, we must normalize the data. In an article from StatsBomb, Colin Trainer proposes to normalize using the number of passes allowed to the opponent. The idea behind this is that a tackle can only be made when the opponent has the ball. But a better approach, in my opinion, is the one suggested by Tom Warville from The Athletic, who proposes using the number of touches allowed to the opponent when the ball is in play, and more specifically, tackles per 1,000 opponent touches. By using this formula to normalize, you can see how in reality, big teams outperform the average team in Europe. Finally, and to determine the tackle's efficiency, I used the true tackles win rate percentage. This metric determines the percentage of successful tackles, but also considers the number of fouls committed, making it quite useful. More information about this formula can also be found in the same article from The Athletic. I will leave links to both articles in the description below. So by looking at tackles efficiency, you can notice how there is a clear difference between the top 3 and the top 10. Defenders from big teams are the ones who better steal the ball cleanly in Europe. Notable mentions are Manchester City in 2018, and especially Liverpool in 2019 and 2020. It's also interesting how in every metric that we have seen so far, Van Dijk's injury impacted Liverpool's defensive performance in 2021. Alright, so let's revisit the objectives of what we're looking for in the best defender. The player that we're looking for must have a high percentage of aerial duels won, a high precision in passes and especially passes under pressure from the opponent, a high true tackles win rate. Surprisingly, I did not find a clear correlation with interceptions and balls recovered, so the importance of this objective is medium. Lastly, there was no correlation between goals conceded and number of clearances and blocks, so the importance of this objective is low. Alright, before presenting you the best defender, I would like to talk about players that I excluded from the analysis from the beginning. So in case you're wondering why my favorite defender isn't here, it might be because of this selection criteria. To be fair, I only consider central defenders. I didn't exclude players like Fabinho, however, who has played both as a defender and midfielder, but I did exclude fullbacks. I only consider defenders who played and still play in the top 5 European leagues during the past 5 years. So retired players or players like Jan Vertonghen, with amazing stats by the way, but who now plays in Portugal were excluded. I also consider defenders with more than one season in these leagues. So unfortunately, players with a brilliant season such as Rubén Diaz were excluded, since at the time of recording this video they do not qualify. Finally, with managers like Pep Guardiola, also known as the nightmare of fantasy football, it's impossible to judge a player based on how many minutes he plays. But I did limit the criteria to a minimum of 12 games per season. With all that small print out of the way, I put all these parameters in the computer. Here are the results. After comparing defensive statistics over the last 5 years for central defenders in the top 5 leagues, 3 players clearly stood out above the rest. In third place we have Virgil van Dijk. Virgil has shown why Liverpool were right to spend £75 million for his services back in 2015. His performance has been impressive over the last 4 seasons. By focusing on the 3 main attributes we have seen so far, you can see how on average he wins 7.7 out of 10 aerial duels, which is almost 30% better than average in Europe. In terms of passes, Van Dijk completes 9 out of 10 passes he makes, and he also does not succumb to pressure with a high number of passes completed while being pressed by opponents. However, you can see how his number of true tackle win rate is actually closer to average. By looking closer, his average fouls per game is low, so it's definitely not the cause. But his number of tackles won per game in 2020 was just 24%. Of course, this was the year of his injury, but in the few games he participated in, he was not successful when tackling. Now, with 12.3 balls recovered per game, and being the defender who is dribbled past the least in Europe with 0.2, I have no doubt that the Wall Van Dijk will return to the top spot in no time. In second place, we have John Stones. Despite his injuries, Stones has had a great performance during the last 5 years with Manchester City. A high percentage of duels won, an excellent percentage of passes completed with an amazing 95%, 8.8 passes under pressure from the opponent for every 90 minutes, which is almost 50% better than the average player. His nickname is Soft Touch, but I think Mr. Clean will better suit him. John is the defender with the fewest fouls in the top leagues in Europe, with 0.4 per game in 5 years, which is impressive. And it's this factor that has given him the second place in this ranking, taking his true tackle win rate to 60%. And while his interceptions are equal to average, his performance on balls recovered and dribbles allowed is way superior. As you can see, Stone's numbers are almost impeccable. And I say almost because there's only one player that outperformed him, and that player is Mats Hummels. Mats Hummels, the experienced German defender. At the time of recording this video, Mats has won a World Cup with Germany, 4 Bundesliga titles, and 2 German Cups with both Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. One word sums up his defensive performance over the past 5 years: consistency. Hummels stands out not only for his high percentage of aerial duels won and passes completed, but especially for his cold blood, being the defender with the highest number of passes under pressure with 10.6 per 90 minutes. Mats has also been quite effective with his tackles with a 57% of true tackle win rate, and this is partly due to his low number of fouls per game with 0.8. Dribble pass numbers are closer to average, probably because of a reduction in his speed as the years go by, but if there's one factor that separates Hummels from the rest of defenders, it's his mind-reading ability. 1.5 interceptions per game place him 50% above average. But what about his 13.5 balls recovered per game, where he's the absolute leader in Europe? With these numbers, Mats Hummels is a complete defender today, able to execute clean tackles when needed, but with the intelligence and positioning of the best interceptors in the sport. And it's this combination that has placed him top of this list, making him the best central defender in world football in recent years. Paolo must be proud. I hope you enjoyed this first video of this new channel. If so, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share with all your football nerd friends. And tell me what you think. Who is the best defender of recent years? Let me know in the comments below. And I'll see you in our next Football Quest.